Hello and welcome to NJBIZ Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Kanige. My guest today is Pete Dontas. He is an Executive Vice President at Wells Fargo in New Jersey. Pete, welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. Good to be here.
Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time. Now, you have a lot of experience in the banking industry and in New Jersey. So it being just about the halfway point of the year, I thought it'd be a good time to sort of chat with you and sort of get your views on what's going on in the business community and the economy these days. First of all, given where we are halfway through the year, has anything surprised you thus far, or has the year gone pretty much as you would expect economically and financially?
I'd say a couple of things. So certainly we're in the middle of the year and here we are. There's been no interest rate cuts. Everybody thought we'd have rate cuts by now. It looks like we're having a soft landing, right? We haven't had any recession issues so far. So I would say if we were sitting here 6 months ago, I'd be pleased. I would have been pleased to be where we are. So I'm actually happy to be, where the economy is, where unemployment is, and where growth is through the middle of the year.
Okay. Now it's really interesting because interest rates are that seems to be the starting place for most of these conversations. Is that where it works for you when you're talking to clients and customers? Is what the Fed is going to do and what they have done? Is that the sort of most important thing on people's mind?
If it's not the most important, it's one of the most important.
Okay.
And I think what that does, Jeff, is it does tend to maybe drive decisions as it relates to borrowing, right? Our business is a combination of lending money to companies, working with them on their treasury management needs, capital markets needs, but lending is a big part of the business. And with where rates are right now, and we use SOFR as our short-term rate. It used to be LIBOR. LIBOR doesn't exist anymore. SOFR is about 5.3. When you add some spread to that, you're looking at the cost of bank debt at 7%, give or take. Companies are really, that's a big part of their decision process compared to maybe where it was 2-3 years ago and maybe where they thought it was going to be at this time of the year. So I think that is driving decisions based on, for working capital, for capital expenditures, maybe even M&A. So I think that is a discussion.
All right, and what are folks taking away from that? I mean, are they being cautious? Are they moving ahead with whatever plans they might have made? Are they changing plans? How are folks responding to this interest rate environment?
So it depends, right? If you need to expand, if your business is growing, a lot of companies are growing. If you need more working capital, it's business as usual, and that's maybe the new normal as to what money is going to cost from a borrowing standpoint. As it relates to capital expenditures, again, it depends. We had one client that was going to expand into a new warehouse up in New York, Westchester County, and they decided not to, and for them was probably the right decision. And I think that was part due to what they thought the business climate for their industry would look like, and to some extent, hey, do I have the growth that will facilitate this expense, which would be pretty significant for them to make that investment. So again, it just depends on where you are in your space.
All right. Okay. Now, obviously, interest rates are a broad category of factor in businesses. I'm curious whether there's anything in New Jersey or this region in particular. For example, there's been an influx of infrastructure spending, dollars coming into the state. Are there other sorts of factors that are driving business decisions right now in terms of what the economy is doing and where it's going?
I think it's a case by case kind of deal, and there's pockets of strength. I think we're seeing some strength in heavy equipment and the demand for heavy equipment. Generic pharmaceuticals, we have a fair amount of business with that sector. Food, everybody talks about food inflation, whether it's at the grocery store, whether it's when you go out to dinner. But you know what? Those areas and industries are doing really well. So I think, again, the interest rates are a factor. But look, maybe this is the new normal where short-term rates will be around 5%. Everybody projects rates to come down. Our Wells Fargo projection is 2 rate cuts this year, down probably, a year ago or at the end of the year, 5 rate cuts.
Right.
See something in September, maybe after November, one more, but who knows?
Right.
The economy is resilient, so we'll see what happens. But
Okay.
that's a fact.
All right. Well, you actually anticipated the next question, which was I was going to ask you what sectors stand out as being particularly strong. You mentioned a couple of them. A, are there any others that you can think of? And B, are there any places where there are some particular weakness that could show some more strength later in the year?
Yeah, I mentioned the ones that were doing well. I think I would say in terms of weakness and something we watch carefully is obviously the office real estate market, which we do some work in. We're very cautious as it relates to that. Multifamily housing, which has been a strength,
Right.
and there's a lot of construction throughout the country and certainly in New Jersey, is something that we also keep an eye on. So I think those two are, you know, cautiously optimistic, but you have to keep an eye on and really work with the strong, whether it's developers or strong partners in that space, and make sure your client selectivity is on.
Okay. Now we've obviously talked a lot about interest rates. There's elections coming up. There's still lots of geopolitical uncertainty. What should businesses be concerned about right now in the economy, in general, and in borrowing and commercial borrowing, things like that? Are those the three main headwinds, or are there other factors that you think folks should be concerned about?
Yeah, look, the election is going to happen, and whatever happens, it's out of our control, obviously. Geopolitically, depends on if you're involved in any of those regions. Most of our clients are not. The other hot button, and it's kind of cooled off, but it's still something that gets discussed, is supply chain and the availability of product and shipping cost, which kind of can fluctuate all over the place. They were very high 2, 3 years ago. They came back down. This is shipping costs in particular. They started to trend a little higher. But I think the supply chain and getting product, whether it's electronics, apparel, heavy equipment, whatever it might be, technology equipment, I think you have to make sure that you have the ability to source that appropriately, whether it's for a B2B type of sale, or if it's for your own business to operate more efficiently.
Right. Well, yeah. That's an interesting point. You're certainly right about that. I mean, I've heard that a lot, particularly, for example, in the construction industry, which seems to be particularly vulnerable and sensitive to those kinds of supply chain disruptions. And I've obviously heard a lot about that over the past couple of years. That's still going on, as far as you can see.
For sure. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I was going to ask you about the possibility of a recession in the second half, which back in the end of last year, early part of this year, a lot of folks might have been expecting. If Wells Fargo was expecting 2 rate cuts, I'm guessing you're thinking the economy is going to be relatively strong the second half of the year.
Look, I think, and Wells Fargo thinks, more importantly, what Wells Fargo thinks.
Right. No,
right?
no, you too. That's why you're here.
Soft landing. It certainly feels like a soft landing. Our forecast for GDP is, I'm looking at my notes here, 2.3% for this year, 1.9% for next year. So that certainly implies some level of growth, right? Unemployment hovering in that 4% range, which is what we're at right now. And then the rate everybody likes to look at is the 10-year. It's about 4.3% today. Maybe it drifts down to about 4%, maybe a little lower next year. But those are all, pretty sustainable type numbers. If we can, again, is it the Goldilocks kind of economy? Its stock market's doing very well, right?
Right.
I think if we can keep what I just said going in terms of unemployment, GDP rates, I think we're in for some decent growth, and I think people will be, for the most part, pleased with where we're going with the economy.
Okay, well, it's that, and then the question is sort of the vibes question, because back when folks were expecting a downturn at some point, it was considered to be sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more people expected it, the more likely it was to happen. What I hear you saying is that it's and especially now, if, as you say, the stock market is doing well, housing prices are holding up, folks still feel a little bit flush, and that's got to have some sort of salutary effect throughout the rest of the economy. Yes.
Absolutely. And you're referring, I think, indirectly to consumer spending, right?
Yes.
Consumer spending has held up. Now, look, credit card debt is very high.
Right.
Something to keep an eye on. But consumer spending, whether it's out the restaurants, travel, both domestic and international, maybe buying, automobiles, maybe that slowed down because car prices are high, interest rates are high, but you still see a lot of new cars on the road. As long as consumer spending holds up, I think that's the key to staying, out of a recession.
Right.
And
Okay.
so far, maybe you've seen a little bit of a headwind with consumer spending, but for the most part, it's been strong.
Okay, very good. All right, and that leads then to the last question I wanted to ask you about. How does how does that translate into what you're hearing from clients and customers? Are they confident and optimistic about what the rest of the year looks like, or are they worried because of all the various headwinds that we've been talking about? What do you get or do you not get a sense at all? I mean, of where people are. Is it difficult to read, or do you get a sense for what kind of decisions folks are going to be making?
No, I think I get a pretty good sense. And in our space in New Jersey at Wells Fargo, we have a variety of industries, right? Like I mentioned earlier, food,
Right.
heavy equipment, insurance, some real estate, manufacturing. So we get a nice cross section of industries. And I would say for the most part, Jeff, it's cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
No one is going to be irrational or, go over the edge or over the top in terms of spending. They're going to, they're going to be calculated as to what they need, whether it's with capital expenditures for, production, equipment, expansion of space, and certainly for people. And then one thing, we can't have a conversation without mentioning AI, right? That's
Right.
the
Okay.
buzzword every day on the news and in conversations. I think that we're in early stages with AI and how that will contribute to growth and productivity and efficiency remains to be seen. But if you remember, we're both old enough to remember 20, 25 years ago when the internet,
Oh, sure.
became a thing. There
Mhm.
was a little bit of let's see what this is all about, and just think about what that has done in terms of efficiency and what we're able to do with things like Uber or getting information online or Spotify with music. Right, we're getting off track a little bit, but I think AI will be the same kind of thing for not just businesses but consumers. But
Right.
it's too early to really say this is what's going to happen. But that
Well,
is a fact.
right. Yeah, that's actually what I was going to say, because what I'm hearing is sort of the same thing. Everybody believes AI is that kind of development on par with the ubiquitousness of personal computers to the introduction of the internet and the widespread use of that. AI seems to be something that everybody is viewing as the next big advance, but they're not sure how it's going to help them personally.
Yep. I wish we knew, but boy, I was just at an offsite and you talk about the client acquisition, credit, the typical stuff you would at a banking offsite. But there was a segment on AI, which was probably the most interesting, and you typically wouldn't get that. But in this day and age, it's something that you can't ignore.
All right, very good. We will leave it there. We've there's a lot going on. Obviously, it'd be great if you could come back and give us an update about the way things look.
Love to do it, Jeff. Really enjoyed chatting with you.
Looking forward to it. Pete Dontas, Executive Vice President, Market for New Jersey at Wells Fargo. Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Take care, Jeff. Have a good day.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.